Hi, friends. Welcome to the very first episode of my podcast called Dear Podcast. This is kind of a pilot episode, a small demo trial version, if you will, just so you know what you're signing yourself up for, or rather subscribing to, which I do hope that by the end of this episode, you have subscribed to this podcast. And with a longer introductional yapping here, let's get straight into it. So, hi, my name is Caroline. I'm 24 years old. I have this thing where I need to know everyone's ages, so I felt that I need to share mine here right now as well. So I'm 24, and for the past few years, for the past 6 or 7 years, I've really wanted to have my own podcast, but I never really went through with it just because I was always too scared or too afraid to actually do it. And if you're asking what I was so afraid or scared of, then I couldn't give you an actual rational reason for it. I just always managed to talk myself out of it. But at the same time, every year I'm like, oh, I wish I would have had a podcast when I was like 16, 17, 18, etc. Just because it would be so much fun to listen to those episodes and hear what I was like and what my thoughts and mindset was like at those different ages. But this year, I've decided to just do it. I'm just going to record it, publish it, see what you think, and just go from there because I can't have another year go by where I'm regretting not doing it. So here we are. And also, if you know me well or if you know me more, then you do know that I love to talk. I'm a talker. I could talk about anything and everything for hours. And that's why it also makes sense for me to have a podcast. So it's sort of an outlet for my thoughts and experiences as well, just so I can have them recorded somewhere and just so that I can share it also with other people, which I do hope that you will, learn something new here, that it's going to be beneficial for you to listen to these as well. And the main topics that I want to cover here, if you have come from my Instagram, then you most likely know what topics I am more passionate about. But if you haven't come from my Instagram, if you somehow found this podcast randomly, or if somebody recommended it to you, which if somebody did, then God bless them. Anyways, if you haven't seen my Instagram, if you're not familiar with my socials or with me in general, then this is what this podcast is, or this episode is exactly about, just to give you a brief overview of what's yet to come and what the vibes are. So one of the main things that I have shared on my Instagram is mental health, and that's something that I want to bring into this podcast as well. So mental health is something that I really feel passionately about, just because I have had my fair shares of struggles and experiences with it, starting with, having anxiety ever since that I can remember when I was a child. And by anxiety, I mean like social anxiety and general anxiety, as well as panic attacks or panic disorder. And then later in high school, got a splash of PTSD with a side of depression. So I would say that it's almost like a full package there. And again, that's something that I have shared on my Instagram a lot, and people have resonated and related to and shared their experiences as well. And that just kind of makes me feel the more need to talk about it, because I feel it hasn't been covered enough in a very unfiltered and raw way. When I was growing up, I can't remember anything about mental health ever being talked about. I think the first time I learned about anxiety was when I was 16. And that says a lot, because I didn't realize that not everybody feels anxious all the time, and especially in certain situations. So that's one of the main topics for me here that I really want to bring into podcast episodes as well, just because it gives me a better chance to talk about it more in depth and more in detail. And going from mental health, the next topic would be body image. And by body image, I mean body dysmorphia, again, something that I have struggled with myself, especially in my teens. And then growing from there to body acceptance and just self-care and self-love in some ways as well, which is something that I really want to also kind of discuss about, because self-love can also be, it can be interpreted in so many ways, and that's something where I want to share my thoughts on too. And then going from there, the next topic that I again feel really strongly about would be periods or menstrual health in general. Throughout my life, I always felt that menstrual health was really important, but I just feel like there hasn't been enough information, or at schools at least, it hasn't been taught about that well. It's just really generic information. I personally can't even remember anything about periods when I went to school. I'm pretty sure we had like some talks about it, but I can't really recall any information from there. I have had some period issues or menstrual health issues in the past, in 2023. If you come from my Instagram and if you were following me back then you do know what I'm referring to, but that's just another topic that I want to talk more in detail about. On my Instagram at the same time, along all of these like health topics, I share a lot about my life in general, or about my travelings, because traveling is another thing that I am just a big fan of. I love traveling, and every now and then I might pop in a few travel stories for you guys here on the podcast too, if that's something that you are interested in. So I can definitely share my traveling and living experiences abroad. And with that being said, all of these topics, as I said, these are the things that I have talked about on my Instagram and shared on my Instagram. So this podcast really is my Instagram, but in an audio version. That's what I'm aiming for here. And then at the same time, the vibes that I'm going for would be that you're basically listening to a friend's voice message. It's really casual, no fancy words here, none of that. I mean, depends who your friends are and what you talk to them about. But what I love about talking to my friends is that whenever I talk to them about anything, I feel like I always learn something new, or like a fun fact or a fun new habit, or just some like useful information. That's the same vibe that I want to give with this podcast, is that you're listening to a friend's voice memo, really casual, but at the same time it's beneficial to you. You're actually getting some, hopefully, valuable information out of it, and some information that can, impact your life in a more positive way. And that's really what I'm aiming for here. So nothing fancy, just really, as I said, casual is the key word here. And I do feel like right now it's time to wrap it up. However, I do want to let you know that if you have any specific topics that you want me to talk about more in depth about, you are more than welcome to slide into my DMs on Instagram. My Instagram is Caroline Casper. I will also leave it somewhere here in the description box. Do we have that here on the podcast things? I hope we do. But yeah, I will leave my Instagram handle here. And as I said, you are more than welcome to give me, first of all, any feedback, any comments on this current episode, and then, some good pointers for the next ones, and just in general, what you want to hear me talk about more. And I'm an open book. As I said, I can talk about anything and everything. Just feel free to let me know on Instagram. And I do want to say that if you're still listening to the podcast right now, thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for tuning in. And I hope that you have a good rest of your day, and I'll talk to you next week. Bye.